Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show, where we're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. I'm one of those badass jet pilots. My name is Commander Drew Brown. The other badass jet pilot is my man, the guy who watches my six, Dr. Paul Thompson. Hello, Brother Paul. How are you today?
Hello, Commander Drew. I'm doing very well today. I had a little setback, but I've recovered. We can talk about it if you want, but I'm doing pretty good today.
No, you're looking good. You sound good. And I got a great quote for you, Dr. Paul, and for the people out there. We turn not older with years, but newer every day. That was by Emily Dickinson. Once again, we turn not older with years, but newer every day. That means every day I wake up, I am the new Drew Brown. And that's how we should think about it. You know, I say time on planet. I don't talk about getting old. You like that, Paul?
Yeah, I like that. You're right. You get up every day. It's a new day, and it's sometimes it's hard to get rid of whatever happened the previous day, particularly if it's bad. But it is a new day, and it's a new time to shine. You have the ability to move forward, not backward. So move forward if you can.
That's correct. And what you really have is you have power over now. You don't have power over yesterday or tomorrow, but right now you can do whatever you want. All right, Dr. Paul, you left us for a little while and you went back to Memphis, Tennessee. And the name of our show this week is How to Get a Job at a Black Airline Convention While Being White. Why would I write that? The reason is Dr. Paul went to the OBAP convention. And when I was there, it was the Organization of Black Airline Pilots. It's not called that anymore, is it, Dr. Paul? What's it called now?
No, a few years ago, they changed the title. Now OBAP stands for the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. It's not just limited to pilots. It's all kinds of people involved in aerospace. Pilots, mechanics, controllers, you name it, UAV, all kinds of stuff.
When you went to the convention, you told me that they were actually interviewing for airline jobs. And that's when I asked you, were there any white people there? And you said, hell yeah, there were white people there. And then you and I said this, when we wanted that airline job, when we got out of the Navy, we would have went to a Ku Klux Klan pilot convention if they were hiring pilots.
If you disguise yourself, I'm thinking about the Spike Lee movie. Yeah, there was quite a bit of cross representation there. I noticed at least 3 airlines hiring, and they had actual hiring. I don't call them booths. They had rooms for each airline. I think there were 3 hiring, and they were bringing them in one by one, and folks were dressed up very, very nicely. Everybody, for your airline interview, everybody looks like they're ready to. They're trying to join NASA, essentially. either NASA or dressed for giving the evening news. That's how they looked.
Paul, do you remember back when we wanted a job? That's saying that they said, what's the best airline job to get? And the answer was anyone that you do get.
That's right. Yeah, there's plenty of representation. They were very, very active. And that was the first day. I think they did it 2 days, but they were there hot and heavy. Lots of people.
Well, what's really, really impressive about OBAP, and Albert Glenn is our main man, and he's like the greatest guy in the world, and he's been running things for a long, long time. But Dr. Paul, you told me a story about Fred Smith and the Magnificent Seven. You want to give us a little update on what this is all about? What is the Magnificent Seven?
Yeah, that's a good question. What is the Magnificent Seven? Because a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, talked about the Magnificent Seven coming up at the convention, months ago. I asked him, what's the Magnificent Seven? I know the movie with Yul Brynner, which was a great movie. He said, no, that's the first 7 Black pilots hired by FedEx. Oh, okay. Well, they did a video presentation, an actual presentation at the convention on the 7 pilots. Now, you asked me about the Fred Smith part?
Yes, Fred Smith obviously had a lot to do with the Magnificent Seven. But what's really, really amazing, and I want you to tell me about this, is that the third pilot hired by FedEx was a black pilot. And that guy said Fred didn't care about black or white. He cared about if we were good pilots or not. Fred Smith is the guy who owns and operates. He's the main guy for FedEx. Tell me how Fred Smith, tell me about the Magnificent Seven and how he hired the third pilot was black.
Yeah, that was interesting. The third pilot, the third pilot hired, and the first black pilot hired was a good friend of mine, and probably yours, Carol Waters, Captain Carol Waters. He was the third pilot. I didn't know he was the third pilot. I knew he was early, but he was the third pilot. And this was verified by Fred Smith giving a video presentation on the last night of the convention. It's very touching. I'm trying to get a copy of it. But long story short, he needed pilots. And Carol Waters he told me this personally, and it matched with the founder, Fred Smith's description exactly. Carol saw there was an opening for a pilot for a company called Federal Express. He called and he said he submitted the application. He said, look, because of his past experiences, I'm interested in the job. I'm a black pilot. And if that's a deal breaker, if that's a problem, we can stop everything now. We won't waste each other's time. Carol told me that 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
He told me that in his cookie shop after he retired. He told me this. And that's basically what Fred Smith said in this tape recording that I'm looking at in this ballroom of 1,000 people. And essentially and Fred said, he listened to that and he said, well, how soon can you get here? And from there, he was hired and came on.
Well, Fred Smith was really, really a pioneer in hiring black pilots because when I got there, it had the most black pilots of any airline in the country. And look what we've become now. FedEx, we love FedEx because both you and I retired from it, and that's where we get our checks every month. But thank God for Fred Smith. He really was something, and he supported me when I did my American Dream speaking, and I was going around the country talking to kids. He really supported that effort, and I applaud you, Fred Smith, and I applaud FedEx. Well, let's do some good news. Remember Charles Barkley, Paul?
Yes, how could I forget?
The round mound of rebound. He just turned down $100 million contract from ESPN, NBC, Disney, Amazon. They all bought the rights for the NBA for $1.8 billion, and they wanted him to come along, and they offered him $100 million. Right. Charles Barkley turned it down because he wanted to keep his TNT family together for that last year. How cool is that?
Super cool. I have to correct you, Commander Drew. It wasn't 1.8 billion. I think it was 11.8 billion.
Oh, what's the difference between 1.8 and 11.8?
Well, I'll take the difference. You keep the 1.8. I'll take the other 10 or the 9 point, whatever it is. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was fantastic. They lost the deal, and he could have actually just opted out of his contract legally, but he didn't do that. I guess he's not really hurting that much. That says a lot for him. You talk about Barkley. Do you remember a Nike commercial he made a long time ago? I think it was in the 80s when he was playing ball. I'm not a role model. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. What was behind that is that what people don't realize, he said, I'm not a role model just because I can dunk a basketball. Essentially, parents need to be role models. This is a long, long, long time ago. And a lot of people didn't like it. But he held to his guns, and he was right. And I think everything that you say and I say backs him up 1,000%.
No doubt about it, Paul. I actually used that. I spoke for 35 years to these kids. And I said those athletes and entertainers are not role models. They're gifted people. A role model must be somebody that you can actually be. In other words, you and I are role models because we were taught how to fly. You can hang out with LeBron James for the rest of your life and you won't ever play like he can play. He has a gift. And I also believe all of us have that gift. We just got to find out what it is. So I applauded Charles Barkley by saying that because kids look up to these athletes and then they realize, wait a minute, I can be in an NBA. And then they screwed up in school and their life goes down the tubes. So God bless you, Charles Barkley. Great, great move. How about this one, Paul? The Wingmen show. A while back, there was a kid named Heman Bekele, and we talked about him because he invented soap that can cure skin cancer. He's a young man. Time just named him Kid of the Year. Tell me about him, Paul.
Yeah, remember we talked about Heman Bekele. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. Young man. I think he's aged now, so I think he's 15. He's an aging teenager, 15 years old, and he's now working with the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University.
Bloomberg again?
Bloomberg again. He's working directly with some, I believe, microbiologists there to help him refine his process for soap. So this is a big deal. And there's a picture of him. We can throw it up there of him with a beaker in his hand. But he's actually got university sponsorship. They saw when he won that 3M competition and got the $25,000 that this is someone that deserves more time. So he's basically a researcher now, and they're trying to get this thing approved by the FDA, and it probably will take 10 years. But even if it takes 10 years, he'll be a ripe old age of 25.
That's right. Well, Paul, before we started the show, I saw you took your Magic Mind. You drank your Magic Mind. We're now sponsored by Magic Mind, but I got a little story to tell you.
Okay.
This weekend, my whole family came into town. My son and his family came from Tampa. My daughter and her family came from New Orleans. And they all came here, and we had a great time, first of all. But everything seemed to have gone wrong. My guest house, it was shut down because I got hit by lightning, so nobody could stay there.
Uh-oh.
I have a nice little lake. People call it a pond, but that's BS. I come from Harlem. That bad boy's a lake. Anyway, the aerator on it, the nice pump that I have on it, that was ruined because of the lightning strike. And I had all these problems happening, but guess what? I wasn't stressing. And I have to say, maybe that's the Magic Mind, because I just thought of it this way. I have a guest house. I have a lake. I have a great family. Why am I stressing? So I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's the Magic Mind, but I'm telling you, ever since I started taking it, it seems like my stress level has gone down. And for anybody out there, just if you would like Magic Mind, all you have to do is go to magicmind.co. That's magicmind.co. And you'll get 20% off if you put in the code Wingmen20. That's Wingmen20. What do you think about that, Dr. Paul? My stress level went down and I had the best weekend with my family.
Well, that's great. The first question came to mind. Your lake, is it called Lake Drew? Does it have a name?
No, it's called Brown Bay.
Brown. Oh, okay, Brown Bay. Yeah. Brown Bay. I don't know if you made that up or if that's true, but that's cool. That's cool. Okay, that's good. It's stress. Like I said, I've been under the weather the last few days. I'm good today. I'm really good today. And the Magic Mind helped a bit with something that's pretty powerful. But the stress level definitely goes down and the productivity definitely goes up, even when you're under the weather. So it's definitely a good thing. I'm glad the lightning strike didn't do any physical damage to anybody. All the other stuff can be repaired.
That's right. And that's when you start thinking clearly, when you realize nobody got hurt. And I had a great weekend. And I do believe that part of that was Magic Mind. Well, check out them badass jets we got behind us today. Dr. Paul has some F-86s, which were jets a while back. And I have that super badass F-4 Phantom behind me. But I want to hear a little bit about the F-86, Paul.
Yeah, F-86 was a transonic fighter airplane. Mostly I think it had a gun, maybe two guns, made in the 40s, made after World War II, and they flew them into the 50s and did some modifications on them. It was a pretty rough transition for folks coming from propeller airplanes to those jets, because as they modified the jets, they had really strange handling characteristics, and there were a lot of crashes, a lot of fatalities. They used to talk about something called the Sabre dance. It's called an F-86 Sabre, and the thing would kind of wallow around, and folks would eject, and sometimes they'd survive, sometimes they wouldn't. If they pulled the nose up too early, too low in airspeed, the airplane kind of went crazy. It's kind of a decent looking airplane. It looks like these in the picture are from the DC Air National Guard. I think they flew them just for a few years from the late 40s till mid 50s, and they went away.
Paul, you remember on NATOPS manuals for the A7, the A6, the T2, the A4, the T-28, all those airplanes we flew, how thick those NATOPS manuals were when you had to learn them? Well,
Yeah.
actually, they were a lot thinner. When they keep adding pages, you remember they called them blood pages because
Yes.
that's when accidents happen, and they started adding pages to all these manuals. You remember that?
Yeah, I used to say if you saw a lot of caution, someone got hurt, something broke, warning, someone got killed. And there were lots of them different. There were all kinds of things like this. Oh wow. Yeah, they got bigger over time.
It sure did. Everybody out there, thank you so much. People on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, thank you so much for following us. We truly appreciate it. And we have a website called wingmanshow.com. That's wingmanshow.com. You can get all of our shows on there, plus YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. But what we really have is we have a newsletter. And the newsletter this week is going to be how to interview for a new job. Since we were talking about airline jobs, we went out and put out a newsletter, how to interview for a new job. I think it's excellent. On that website, we also have something called the Frequent Flow Line. And that's a place where you can ask us questions, anything you want, and we'll answer them. And we have one for this week. There's a man, 75-year-old man from Toronto, Canada. He says he loves our show and he wants to thank us for bringing some good news to the air and being great role models. That's amazing. He just said that. Thank you very much for saying that. But he wanted to know, why did we decide to do a podcast? And I'll just start off quickly by saying, I know that there are a lot of bad things shown in the news every single day. And actually, if you want to do better in your life, stop watching the news. But the truth is, there are a lot of good things that happen every day also, just nobody pays attention to it. Well, Dr. Paul Thompson and Commander Drew Brown are here to bring you good news. We talk about good things. And I knew I wanted a podcast that when somebody listens to it in the beginning, they feel better at the end of the podcast. What do you think?
That's great. And I could answer him saying, that appreciate you calling us a good role models. I appreciate that. The reason I got involved was because Dr. Commander Drew, Mr. Drew asked me to. It was actually all his idea. It was his idea, and I just went along with it and got into it as time went on. I don't have any background in show business or behind the camera, in front of a camera, or any of that stuff. So this is new to me. Basically, he is my mentor and I am the mentee. This is a new world for me. We've done a lot of shows now, so it's not as foreign, certainly. And we're still growing, still developing. And for me, it's actually a kind of a mental challenge. And I find it very stimulating. I have to kind of get up and think and be a little quicker on my feet than I would normally be if the camera wasn't rolling.
Well, Paul, the reason I asked you to do this with me is because you've always been a good wingman, not just flying jets, but as a friend also. And I knew we were getting ready to go into battle. And it's silly to go into battle by yourself. So what I did is I asked my wingman, you, to go along into battle with me. And I think we're going to win this war because good will overcome evil. I know that. And that brings me to a wingman PSA. From the 11 Facts in Life. This is from fact number 11. The name of my book, You Gotta Believe. You Gotta Believe. Dr. Paul, I wrote a book a while back called You Gotta Believe. And the
Right.
reason I named it that is because you have to start believing in yourself before you start anything. You have to know that you can do things. You are good enough, no matter what anybody tells you. You got to believe in yourself. And if other people don't believe in you, it doesn't matter as long as you do.
That's true. I've got an autographed copy downstairs. I still have it. I have the book. I have the book, and remember when it was shown on the Donahue show?
Yeah, Phil Donahue just passed away, and he really gave me my big start on national television.
Yeah, I saw you on there twice, at least twice.
You want to hear a good Phil Donahue story? When
Sure.
I got on there, he called me an African American. And I said, wait a minute, Phil, where did mankind start? What continent? He said, Africa. I said, Phil, where do you live? He said, I live in America. I said, you're an African American too. Welcome to the club. And you know what he told me?
What?
Let's go to a commercial. And we never talked about it again.
That's good. That's cool. That's cool.
All right. So remember, we were talking about Magic Mind. They have properties in there that are really healthy. And I want to just talk about one. And one of them is turmeric. Have you ever used turmeric, Paul? Can you tell me something about it?
Yeah, I use turmeric all the time, and it's in Magic Mind, which is great. And I also use turmeric. I get raw turmeric, and I make it into a thing called golden milk. And what I like about it, it's basically anti-inflammatory, which affects all of us, and can be useful in blood pressure, a lot of things, blood pressure. But I take it mostly for inflammation. And the only side effect is it may make your fingers yellow if you touch the real stuff. And it tastes good. If you like Asian cooking, particularly Indian cooking, you're having plenty of it.
Well, I was introduced to turmeric by a young lady who became my friend who was in a very horrible car accident. I call her Sunshine. Her name's Loretta. Anyway, she was in a really bad car accident, and she told me that turmeric is the thing that really saved her from pain. And I started taking turmeric because as you get a little bit, let's just say, on in time, your knees start hurting, your shoulders start hurting. All of a sudden, you wake up and something hurts. Well, turmeric, the reason for pain is inflammation. Turmeric takes care of that inflammation. And for anybody out there who's interested in getting turmeric with their Magic Mind, just go to magicmind.co. That's magicmind.co. And if you want 20% off, just put in the code Wingmen20. Wingmen20. But that turmeric is a hell of a substance, and it really has prevented me from having more pain than I need. Thank you, turmeric. Thank you, Magic Mind. Here's the gouge, Paul. The oldest living person in the world, a lady named Maria Brañas. She lives in Spain. She just passed away physically at 117 years old, which is incredible. But I'm going to put a picture of her up there because I want to actually read what she said, why she was able to live so long. And she said that her longevity was contributed to order, tranquility, good connections with family and friends, contact with nature, emotional stability, no worries, no regrets, lots of positivity, and staying away from toxic people. And I love that more than anything. If you are around toxic people, get away from them. Because if you're around four toxic people, you'll be the fifth. We always say that. Paul, can you believe that?
Yeah, I can't believe that because you say toxic people. Sometimes toxic people can be like, rotten fruit. If you put rotten fruit together with something that's not rotten, eventually it'll spread. Spores spread, and it'll ruin the whole thing. I found that out in life, and it's true in the refrigerator. It's true in life. You need to get rid of it, clean it off, cut out the bad part, or do something. But if that cancerous attitude, if there's a cancerous attitude that's around there, it affects everything else. How do you feel about that?
I feel the same way, and I really do stay away from toxic people. The more time on planet you get, the smarter you become. And like that our quote said, I become newer every day. And I avoid negativity. I avoid toxic people, to be honest with you. And it's really made me much happier. Everybody out there, the name of our show is called The Wingman Show. And the reason we call it The Wingman Show is because there are people out here in the world who take care of others. But boy, do I have a wingman for you today.
Who's that?
Actually, a whole town. It's a whole town in Possum Trot, Texas. And they just
Where's
did a
that?
movie about it, Paul. The movie was called Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. There was a Bishop Martin and his wife Donna who adopted some children. What he did was he got his whole town to adopt 77 of the hardest kids to adopt, the kids who really weren't going anywhere. 77 kids were adopted by his town. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I've read about that story. That's interesting. It was the town, and I think it was over like 23 different families. So it sounded like they adopted 3 or 4 kids apiece, which is a lot. And it's not a prosperous area from what I see. They're not prosperous at all. And sometimes they have to struggle for food, and they would actually kill squirrels, and I think they raised chickens and other things, but they actually lived off the land. And one thing that I thought that was interesting, that they talked about one of the children in particular who was having trouble adjusting, either running away, and then wouldn't eat the food that was provided. It was different food. They weren't used to eating vegetables or peas and carrots and meats and things like that. All they wanted to eat was cereal and milk. That's all they'd had. They were obviously malnourished, but didn't know any better, and probably had some psychological issues to go along with that dietary problem. But apparently, though some of those kids, they have families of their own. They've become successful, and it's all due to the generosity of the people of Possum Trot, Texas, near the Louisiana border, I think.
Incredible, incredible. And I want to read you something that Mr. Weigel said. And Mr. Weigel is the person who did the movie. And he said, and I'll show you a picture of the town again. The foster system in America is ground zero for most of the childhood trauma. It is ground zero for child trafficking and a primary driver of both the prison population and homelessness. That is a deep statement right there. That's a deep statement. Everybody out there, thank you so much for listening to our show. We really, really appreciate it. And for me, to all of you, anything that you think is beautiful, anything that you think is important, and for everybody out there, whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too, Commander Drew, and we appreciate all those who listen, like, and share our message. Please give us a thumbs up if you're looking on YouTube. Some kind of positive comments are always appreciated. Hit the bell notification icon, sign up. Most of you aren't signed up. Please sign up so you get alert every time we put out a new episode. And check out the newsletter. There's a lot of interesting stuff that's very useful to you in the newsletter. God bless you.
Cut.
Cut?
I think that was the best show we ever did.
Really? Good.
I don't know. Me once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend, thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth, and goodwill towards all men and women.